The first part of the Node core, the core code that makes up Node.js that we'll take a quick look at, is the C++ side. The C++ core. The area of Node.js that's about adding the features, about building the base, the foundation of what makes Node.js a web server. Let's take a quick look now, for the first time, at the Node.js source code. To begin with, we'll go to github.com/nodejs. If you're not familiar with GitHub, you should be. It's an awesome website full of open source utilities and software. In other words, code that you can look at, use, reuse, change for your own purposes. And Node is one of those pieces of software that is available to look at and browse in the GitHub website. So Node.js is where Node lives, and there's a number of repositories. We could just filter for it or browse for it, but we're looking for Node. This is the repository, and if I click it, we'll see that it's full of code, files, and folders. And so you can click around, for example, in the lib and src folders, and you can actually open the files if you like. GitHub also provides a way to download the files to your local computer. So that's what I've done. We're going to take a quick look. Again, you don't have to do this yourself. I just want to show you what's going on behind the scenes with Node.js. Oh, and as a side note, you can also go to github.com/joint. This is where the Node repository used to live. Node was created by a guy named Ryan Dahl while working at a company called Joyent, and they're still involved in Node.js and its development. However, Node.js has since become more open source structured so that there's a foundation that's actually working on Node.js itself. But many of the things and utilities that Node.js depends on are still found here in Joyent's GitHub website, like libuv, for example, which we'll see later in the course, and others. So there's a lot of code out here, both on github.com/joyent and github.com/nodejs, particularly the Node repository here, and this repository is the one that we're going to look at. So I've downloaded the Node.js source code, and I've opened it in Visual Studio Code. We'll take a look at just a few things. There are a few folders of interest within all of this code. We'll start with DEPs, deps, or dependencies. That's things that were built outside of Node.js but are a part of Node.js. For example, the real obvious one, V8, Google's V8 JavaScript engine. That's part of Node.js. There's other things we'll see later in the course, like UV, this is libuv, or HTTP parser. We'll see that as well. So there are other libraries that are built into Node.js, and some were built specifically for Node.js, and these are C++ libraries of code, like zlib, for example. This is for creating and using zip files. Then there's the src folder, which is the C++ source code, and there's quite a lot of it. You'll notice if I go to node.h, one of the first lines of code is what we would expect. We're embedding V8. We're using the V8 engine throughout Node.js to process and execute JavaScript code. And of course, there's a lot more going on in this C++ program, a great deal. And we'll see some of these things as we go along. So the C++ core is a core of features, of utilities built in C++ and made available to JavaScript via the hooks in the V8 engine. So we can see that there's plenty going on here, and we won't go through all of this in this course. Most of these things you can find in the Node.js source code as far as actual usage, as far as actually what they do. But we can see and understand and get a feel for the fact that there's an awful lot of features that Node.js is adding to JavaScript, making available into JavaScript. So the mental model you should have is not that Node.js is JavaScript, but rather that Node.js accepts JavaScript and allows us to have more features that we write with it than normal. That's enough for the C++ core of Node.js. Our intent here is not to go deeply into what's happening in the C++ code right away, nor to go through C++ itself as a language to learn to be able to understand the source code. We want to understand that it exists, and a few times throughout this course we'll actually come back here in order to have a deeper understanding of what's going on. But let's move on with the course.